What's up, YouTube? This is 2 Raw 4 TV. Alright, so in this video, I want to talk about Nate Tiny Archibald. Alright, Nate Tiny Archibald probably is only known today for a record that he set back in 1972-73 with the then Kansas City Omaha Kings, now of course the Sacramento Kings. And in that season, he became the first player, and for decades, the only player to lead the league in scoring and assists in the same season. Now, Trae Young joined him either this past season or a year before that in leading the league in scoring and assists. But even with that comes with an asterisk, because Trae led the league in total assists and total scoring, while Nate led in both total assists and scoring average and assist average. So Nate still is really technically the only guy to ever lead the NBA in scoring and assist average in the same season. But he was not a one season anomaly. He was one of the great players of his era, one of the great one-on-one players in the history of the NBA. Unfortunately, injuries kind of took away from his total potential, although he did go on to win a championship with the Boston Celtics. But Nate Tiny Archibald was born, in 1948 in New York City. And Archibald became a playground legend while growing up in a rough and tumble neighborhood in the South Bronx borough of New York City. He played high school basketball for only 1.5 seasons and was cut from the varsity squad at DeWitt Clinton High School as a sophomore. He returned to the team as a junior. During his time without basketball, Archibald briefly flirted with dropping out of high school after having been largely truant in past years. But with the help of two mentors, Floyd Lane and Pablo Robertson, Archibald turned it around. Robertson, a former standout at Loyola of Chicago and a Harlem, New York playground impresario, had seen the gifted, mercurial Archibald in action on the playgrounds and convinced the young man's high school coach to reinstate him on the squad. Despite playing in just blowouts as a junior, the shy, quiet teen managed to blossom into a high school star, being named team captain in an all-city selection in 1966. Off the court, Archibald began to attend school regularly and worked to improve his poor academic standing, which kept most colleges from offering him a scholarship. To improve his chances of playing major college basketball, Archibald enrolled at Arizona Western College, then transferring to the University of Texas at El Paso, or UTEP, the following season. He had 3 standout seasons at El Paso from 1967 to 1970 under Hall of Fame coach Don Haskins. Archibald was selected in the second round of the 1970 NBA draft, the 19th pick by the Cincinnati Royals. He was also drafted by the Texas Chaparrals of the ABA. In his NBA debut, Archibald recorded 17 points and 7 assists in a 128-104 loss to the New York Knicks. On March 13, 1971, Archibald set a then career high by scoring 47 points in a 136-127 victory over the Atlanta Hawks. On November 18, 1972, Archibald scored 51 points and dished out 14 assists in a 127-117 victory over the Houston Rockets. In the 1972-73 season, Archibald led the NBA in scoring and assists with 34 points per game and 11.4 assists per game in 46 minutes per game, with all three averages being career highs, becoming the first player to win the titles in both categories in the same season. In the 1967-68 season, Oscar Robertson led the NBA in points and assists per game, but did not win the title because they were based on totals rather than averages at the time. In the 2021-22 season, Trae Young of the Atlanta Hawks would become only the second player ever to lead the league in both categories. Archibald's scoring average of 34 points per game broke the NBA record for a guard, and as of 2023 is still a record for point guards. His 910 assists that season were also an NBA record at the time, breaking Guy Rogers' mark of 908. He was named the Sporting News NBA MVP that season. I think the NBA MVP that year was Dave Cowens of the Boston Celtics. I think they went 68-14 that year. So you may be wondering, why haven't you ever heard about this 68-win Celtic team? Well, that's because they lost in the conference finals to the eventual NBA champion, New York Knicks, who I believe won 57 games that year. And also it has to be noted that, if my memory serves me correctly, John Havlicek suffered a significant elbow injury. And that during that series or before that series. And that obviously had an effect on that series as far as the outcome. During the 1975 NBA playoffs, Archibald made the postseason for the first time in his career after the then Kansas City Kings finished 44-38 in the regular season. Archibald went on to average 20.2 points and 5.3 assists in a 6-game series loss in the first round to Bob Love and the Chicago Bulls. Archibald would play for the Royals/Kings franchise from 1970 to 1976. Although Archibald was the Kings' most popular player, he was traded to the New York Nets for two first-round draft picks, future All-Star Otis Birdsong and Rookie of the Year Phil Ford, Jim Eakins, and Brian Taylor in 1976. Brian Taylor, later three-point star in the early NBA. Archibald would go on to average a comparatively low 20.5 points per game in his 34 games with the Nets. Injured for much of the 1976-77 season, Archibald was traded by the Nets to the Buffalo Braves before the 1977-78 season, again for two first-round draft picks, this time eventually becoming renowned defender Michael Ray Richardson and prolific scorer Clifford Robertson, as well as, and not the Cliff Robinson from Portland, this is a different Cliff Robinson, as well as George Johnson. Archibald tore his Achilles tendon and never played a regular season game for the Braves. Archibald was traded by the Buffalo Braves to the Boston Celtics as part of a 7-player deal before the start of the next season, the 78-79 season. His career at the Celtics started poorly. He showed up 20 pounds overweight, and by this point, because of the injuries, Archibald had lost a lot of the quickness, speed, and shiftiness that he had shown in his prime with the Omaha Kings and Sacramento Kings, and they were the Sacramento Kings at the time, but the Cincinnati Royals and Kansas City Omaha Kings and the Kansas City Kings. He wasn't the same player that he had been at that time after the injuries. However, he adjusted and helped guide the Celtics to the best record in the NBA for 3 consecutive years, from 1979 to 1982. Archibald won his first and only NBA championship with the Boston Celtics in the 80-81 season alongside then young NBA star Larry Bird. In Game 6 of the finals, Archibald recorded 13 points and 12 assists as the Celtics closed out the series against the Houston Rockets. On February 15, 1982, Archibald recorded a then Boston Celtic high 23 assists in a 145-144 win over the Denver Nuggets. Now, when I say Celtic high, I mean that's the most he ever had in the game as a Celtic himself. That wasn't a Celtic record. After being waived by the Boston Celtics after 1983, Archibald played the 83-84 season with the Milwaukee Bucks. This would be his final season. He started at point guard in all 46 games he played. Shortly thereafter, he retired. Archibald was an All-NBA first-team selection 3 times, and an All-NBA second-team selection twice, a 7-time NBA All-Star Game selection. He was named in 1981 NBA All-Star Game MVP. Archibald led the NBA in free throws made 3 times and free throw attempts twice. He competed in 876 professional games, scored 16,841 points, or averaged 18.8 points per game, and dished out 6,476 assists, or 7.4 assists per game. He was named one of the 50 greatest players in NBA history in 1996. And Archibald was inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame in 1991. In 2021, he was announced as part of the NBA's 75th anniversary team. And to commemorate the NBA's 75th anniversary, The Athletic ranked their top 75 players of all time and named Archibald as the 67th greatest player in NBA history. Nate Archibald, to be honest with you right now, is somewhat lucky to be alive. I guess very lucky to be alive. You may recall a couple of years ago, the NBA finally issued preventative health and overall health care coverage to some of the older players that previously it was not available to. And it was during these examinations that Nate Archibald was diagnosed with a condition that was affecting his heart. So much so that he had to eventually have a heart transplant. Last I checked, Nate Archibald is doing pretty good with his new heart, and hopefully he'll be around for many, many years to come. But just want to do a tribute to Nate Archibald, one of the great players of his era. And also you read about the story. It shows the power of redemption, getting a second chance. Had he not gotten a second chance as a high schooler, who knows what would have happened to him. And that's all I got to say about that. Tell me what you guys think.